everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's breakfast webinar. If you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, make sure that it is clicked to go to everyone. And if you could introduce yourself and tell us where you're zooming in from today, helps us get a sense of who's with us this morning in the Zoom room. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Hudson River Watershed Alliance's monthly breakfast webinar series. My name is Emily Vale. I'm the Executive Director of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. We host this Watershed Breakfast lecture series every second Thursday of the month. We're really happy to have you here with us. If you're just joining us, please feel free to introduce yourself and where you're zooming in from in the chat so we know who we've got in the Zoom room with us today. It's always great to see some familiar and new faces and see all over the watershed where people are tuning in from this morning, and sometimes outside the watershed and outside the state too. So great to have someone from North Carolina and other locations as well. So I want to give a couple announcements from the Hudson River Watershed Alliance before we get our program underway. We are really excited to be having our Wavemaker Awards benefit next week. So that is Wednesday, May 17th at the Falcon in Marlborough, so just north of Newburgh. And we are going to be celebrating the work of our watershed volunteers and our 4 Watershed Wavemaker awardees in particular. This year, our awardees are Russell Urban Mead, the Piermont Waterfront Resiliency Commission, the Hudsonia's Biodiversity Resource Center, and the Sanctuary for Independent Media. And we really wanted to highlight Russell this morning because Russell in 2007 actually started the Omelet series. We used to be at the Plaza Diner in New Paltz, and Russell and a team started that, coordinated that. Russell, as a volunteer, ran this program for 15 years before stepping back to do other things with his time. So we really celebrate Russell and want to honor his work this year. So please come out. We are going to be at the Falcon, again, May 17th, 6 to 8:30 p.m. And registration and more information is on our website for that program. It's a really great time to network and meet folks. We'll have a panel discussion with our awardees and live music from the Gold Hope duo. It should be a really fun time. We also, as I mentioned, have this breakfast lecture series every second Thursday of the month. Next month, June 8th, will be our focus on the Water Quality Improvement Program and land acquisition for source water protection. So we're really thinking about May and June as a 2-part program. We'll be talking about the Drinking Water Source Protection Program today, and next month, learning more about some implementation opportunities through the Water Quality Improvement Program. So that will be June 8th. 8:30 to 9:30, and the registration link for that program is in the chat if you'd like more information. So we will be taking a little bit of a summer break after June, but all of our webinars are recorded. They're all on our YouTube channel and also on our website. So if you missed any, or if you can't make next month, that will all be recorded and shared on the website and our YouTube channel. So I want to thank NEIWPCC and the Hudson River Estuary Program for funding this series. This has been a focus on state resources for implementing watershed work, both technical assistance and grant programs. And we've got Jen Benson here on tech support. So if you have any tech issues during the program, you can write to her and we'll try to get those sorted out for you. In terms of some logistics for today, we have this set up as a Zoom webinar, so please feel free to interact in the chat, introduce yourself, let us know where you're zooming in from. questions should go into the Q&A box, which is available at the bottom of your screen. We are going to be holding questions till the end because we've got a variety of different presenters who may answer your question in a later slide, but please feel free to use that Q&A box throughout, and we'll take questions at the end of the program. So with that, I just want to thank everyone again for joining us this morning, and I'd like to hand it over to our team of presenters. That's Lindsay Drew, Environmental Analyst from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Grant Jang, Drinking Water Specialist from the Drinking Water Source Protection Program at Department of Health, Lauren Bunce, Water Resources Coordinator at Hudson Valley Regional Council, Tim Rogers, Mayor of the Village of New Paltz, and Anna Palmer, Watershed Resource Specialist from the Hudson River Estuary Program. So I'll hand it over to Lindsay to get the presentation underway.
Great, thank you, Emily. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Is that looking okay on your end? Okay, excellent. All right, morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name, like Emily said, my name is Lindsay Drew, and I work on DEC's central office on the Drinking Water Source Protection Program. And I will be co-presenting on our program along with Grant. If you'd like to just quickly say hello.
Good morning. My name is Grant from the New York State Department of Health. I work with primarily communities in the Hudson Valley regarding their drinking water source protection concerns.
Thanks. All right. So before we jump into what the program is about, we just wanted to give you a little bit background info on what source water is and why we should protect it. So source water is where your drinking water comes from. It could be streams, lakes, rivers, reservoirs, or below ground from groundwater. Your water provider treats it and delivers safe drinking water to your home. Protecting source water reduces the risk of contamination. Source water could be impacted by how we use the land and the surrounding watershed. Some potential contaminant sources include solid waste, agriculture, transportation, and residential sources. Communities can take action to protect their drinking water by conserving land, developing zoning, educating their community, and restoring buffers. And that's what DWSP2 sets out to do. So the Drinking Water Source Protection Program empowers municipalities to take action to protect their public drinking water sources and the surrounding environment. DWSP2 is a voluntary program. We offer free technical assistance to develop and implement community-specific drinking water source protection plans. We currently have 64 participating municipalities, 2 of which you'll hear from later today, and with plans serving almost 2 million New Yorkers and protecting 72 sources of drinking water across the state. So what can you expect from participating in DWSP2? We provide communities with free technical assistance to develop their source water protection program. This can be completed on a flexible schedule. You are provided maps of the drinking water source and the surrounding area, and it can be used for local planning outside of the DWSP2 plan. You also are provided a full inventory of potential contaminant sources and source water protection actions that can be implemented to prevent contamination from occurring, as well as identifying potential funding sources and strategies to access those funding sources. So as I mentioned, you'll be provided a free technical assistance provider. So what does that mean? Your technical assistance provider will help coordinate the stakeholder group, guide the development of your DWSP2 plan, assist in data interpretation, develop source water maps, identify strategies for protection, provide guidance on funding, and support the implementation of your plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Grant to talk a little bit more about what the planning process looks like.
Sure. So there's 4 main phases to the DWSP2 process. That would be the plan preparation, the plan development, and then importantly for DWSP2, the implementation of the actions identified in the plan, and then monitoring progress as things progress. So first we have the plan development, or the plan preparation, my apologies. Next slide, please. And what this is going through and getting information, collecting information on the water system itself, getting information on what the current sources of drinking water are, and surveying information available through either the Department of Health with regards to water withdrawal, surveying existing concerns that stakeholders may have, information gathering to help further guide and tailor the plan to each municipality's specific concerns and needs. And based on the information gathered in the plan preparation phase, we move over to the development. Next slide, please. So, we importantly work on preparing maps to help convey where the sources of drinking water are relative to the municipality itself, as well as what potential concerns there may exist. So, we found that maps are very helpful for guiding the discussion and having folks be able to properly visualize where things are. Next slide, please. And then based on the concerns identified in the preparation and early planning phases, we start coordinating the stakeholder group to bring in all the parties that have relevant expertise in the planning process, or may be beneficial to the project as a whole, right? So if there's concerns about development threatening the water sources of the municipality, then certainly the planning and zoning board should be included in the conversation. So it's not a top-down mandate process. It's a bottoms-up collaborative and cooperative approach. Next slide, please. And then from there, we work on formulating a vision and goals for the plan itself to further guide the development of the plan and into the future. Next slide. And then, going off of the map and the information discussed in the stakeholder groups, in the stakeholder meetings, we work on an inventory of potential contaminant sources. And as some of those include things like petroleum bulk storage facilities, sites where there may be contamination present, or potential spill incidents, discharges to water from, say, permitted and hopefully no unpermitted discharges, mineral extraction sites such as mines or oil and gas wells, even residential concerns such as septic systems, as well as transportation and waste management and disposal, and other things that may be of specific concern to the municipalities themselves. Next slide. And then we work on completing maps and then presenting them in a manner that is most useful to the municipalities, right? So recognizing that not every municipality has somebody able to work with GIS and mapping data on hand. We provide the information to you in the format that's most usable by decision makers, whether that be actual mapping files for their in-house mapping person, or just high quality printable maps that you can unroll and display and look at in a town hall meeting, for instance. And next slide, please. And then based on the concerns identified and the priorities to stakeholder group, we work on identifying actionable, realistic, and affordable protection and management methods, and things like conserving land or tweaking the municipal zoning to include source water as a concern, as well as providing educational resources for the residents of the municipality on actions that can be things like where does your water come from, as well as how best to protect it. And we also work on identifying funding sources accompanying the protection and management methods as necessary. Next slide, please. And then, because we don't want these plans to sit on a shelf gathering dust, we work with you folks, the municipalities, to develop an implementation timeline, and how best to implement these projects and actions that are discussed, such that they become reality to protect drinking water quality into the future. Next slide. And lastly, the finalizing of the plan itself, and that can take different forms. You know, some municipalities have opted to adopt it into a municipal code. Others, you know, are just proceeding along with the plan without doing that. But finalizing it, you know, making sure that there's a contingency or there's handoff, and that there's you know, ways to actionably track progress moving forwards. Which brings me to implementation. So that's back to Lindsay.
Yep. So after the plan is complete, a subset of the stakeholder group, which we also call the plan management team, which can also include new community members as well, will begin implementing your drinking water source protection plan. So that is really putting into action all of those management methods and protection methods that you identified during the formation of your plan. And these are unique to your community, and they can really range in variety. We just provide a few examples in that previous slide, such as education and zoning. So it's really up to what your community needs and where you're at in the source water protection process from previous work you may have already completed. This is an example here on this slide of a community conducting a public education event to learn about local water quality. This is a great way to build awareness in your community and just build education and connection to the source of your drinking water. So the last phase of the program is called progression, and that is also led by the plan management team. So the idea here is to keep the plan a living document, the providing updates to your community as progress is made, and updating the plan on an as-needed basis. This may also involve interacting with us, the DWSP2 state team, to just give us updates on how things are going and any barriers to implementing your DWSP2 plan. So with that, I will now turn it back over to Grant to talk about the Town of Red Hook's plan.
Sure. So the Town of Red Hook, for folks that are not familiar, is located in northwestern Dutchess County. It's relatively small population-wise, only about 10 to 11,000 residents. Public water supplies serve about 5,700 people, split across the town of Red Hook, the village of Red Hook, Bard College, as well as a number of smaller public water systems across the town, including, say, mobile home communities. The sources used are a combination of groundwater and surface water, and also, groundwater and surface water, and groundwater that's pulling from surface water. So it's a little bit of a complicated system, but all three systems are entwined, which is why it made sense for all three municipal or communities to be included. Next slide, please. The Town of Red Hook chose to participate in DWSP2 to better plan for future development. They were in the process of, rolling out some new development plans, and they wanted to ensure that was not going to be threatening their existing and potential future sources of drinking water. And Red Hook has been very proactive regarding source protection in the past, but it's not always as easy as it seems to utilize the existing protections. And so one thing that they wanted some help with was how to better enforce the existing protections that they had on the books, as well as ways to engage and educate the communities within Red Hook, and to learn about funding sources for future source protection. So again, Red Hook has been very proactive regarding source protection in the past. They have purchased a significant amount of conservation easements and acquired a significant amount of land in a town, purchased using local funds. Some time ago, they enacted what they called a environmental protection overlay district, which provided a wellhead protection area, as well as buffers along the Sawkill Stream corridor to protect both the surface and ground sources of water. They've worked with local partners, including the Sawkill Watershed community, on conducting regular sampling of water quality parameters in the Sawkill Creek. And they've also been hard at work to develop a public wastewater system so as to mitigate the impacts of septic system discharge into the Sawkill, as well as to better facilitate future development without threatening water resources. And then I will pass it on back to Tim and Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Mayor Tim Rogers and I will be co-teaming on the section on the Village of New Paltz. I'll get started with a little bit of background. The Village of New Paltz, for those of you who don't know, is located in Ulster County. Its public water supply is a combination of a reservoir, groundwater, and is supplemented by the Catskill Aqueduct from New York City. It serves approximately 15,600 people, which includes the village of New Paltz, some of the town, and also the faculty, staff, and students from SUNY New Paltz. Turn over to Tim.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here discussing water. I always describe figuring out our municipal water system as my favorite part of the job as mayor. I would add that when I describe who we provide water to, I also highlight the entire K through 12 New Paltz Central School District, which includes kids from a variety of municipalities in addition to the village of New Paltz and the town of New Paltz. So like our water system impacts a great number of people in our region, in addition to the entire college campus. They are our largest water customer, and we saw that during COVID when the dorms were 43% full and we just had fewer users of our water system. And that's really important because we need our users to consume water on a regular basis, so we're getting the cash flows in so we can serve the debt that we have when we replaced our multi-million-dollar water filtration plant that you're seeing a picture of here on this slide. So I think what's really fascinating about our water system is the crown jewel of it is really this 60-acre parcel that includes a connection to the Catskill Aqueduct as well as 4 reservoirs. One of the reservoirs was constructed in the early 1900s. It actually predates the Catskill Aqueduct. So we've been sourcing water from this section of the Swangunk Ridge for well over 100 years. And what's I think interesting about our situation is, and it was discussed in some of the earlier slides, is the proximity to neighbors. Like we have probably one of the best neighbors imaginable in the Mohonk Preserve. So our 4 reservoirs are receiving water that is coming from the Mohonk Preserve, and about 60% of our water is bought from the aqueduct, and then the other 40% is coming from those reservoirs. And then the other project that we're working on is the groundwater wells. So we identified 3 wells on our property, the 60-acre property. They have geologic features that don't connect with each other. So it's very exciting that we're able to source water from the ground, and each well will be independent from each other. And then there's a 4th well that was over the property line on the Mohonk Preserve property. We actually worked with the preserve to acquire 2 acres from them and make sure that that 4th well is now part of our property. So hopefully we're at the final stretches of connecting those 4 groundwater wells. So we'll actually have 3 different sources to protect groundwater wells, reservoirs, and the Catskill Aqueduct. Do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah. So what we did during our study was we tried to look at what risks exist. And one of the reasons that we wanted to take a closer look is because we had a very unfortunate situation when we were updating our water treatment plant. The construction process involved a oil line that provided heat to our facility. It was damaged, and then heating oil actually leaked into our largest reservoir. That happened in February of 2020. We thought it was a major world crisis, and it was just moments before COVID. And we always look back on that experience and compare it to how disruptive COVID was compared to how disruptive that 1 week of not having water. It was almost like a warm up for COVID for us. So in terms of trying to identify other risks that exist, we were thinking proximity to Mountain Rest Road, whether salt from the trucks that salt that road during the winter creates a risk. There's also a range that our New Paltz Police Department uses to practice shooting. Would there be a risk with the ammunition that's left over from target practice? And one of the low-tech solutions that we came up with was our Department of Public Works created a berm to go between our largest reservoir and the road. So that was kind of the takeaway that we came up with in terms of something that we could do that we thought would be useful and not cost us an enormous amount of money. But we couldn't really identify too many other things that we needed to do that would protect us, probably because we are in a fortunate spot and that our neighbor is the Mohonk Preserve. So next slide. And there's a picture of our beautifully constructed berm. We actually had purchased a brand new excavator. Our public works guys were very excited to use that new excavator to build that berm. And it's like I said, it's a comparatively low tech solution, but should provide us with an additional layer of protection. Next slide.
Thank you. So I'm just going to wrap up with a quick summary of the goals of DWSP2 and what we hope to provide communities who participate in our program. So the main advantages received by communities that participate in DWSP2 are the promotion of public health and resiliency, the increase in community confidence in their drinking water, enhance environmental protection and recreation, and improve source water quality and quantity, and avoid preventable drinking water treatment costs, strengthen community partnerships. So thank you so much for listening in. There's our contact information if you'd like to follow up with us after the slideshow. And I also have some QR codes to our DWSP2 interest form for municipalities to fill out if they would like to receive a community-specific DWSP2 presentation, and also a QR code to our application. We just like to show how easy it is to apply, and feel free to fill it out as well if you're interested. And our email for the program is listed as well, and I believe will be shared in the chat. So thank you very much, and I will now pass it over to Anna for her presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay and Grant and Lauren and Mayor Rogers, and also Emily for putting this all on. My name is Anna Palmer. I am a watershed resources specialist with the Hudson River Estuary Program through a partnership with NEIWPCC. And I'm sure most of you know, but the Hudson River Estuary Program is a special DEC partnership that helps people protect, enjoy, and revitalize the Hudson River and its estuary. Our boundaries cover roughly 10 counties that border the tidal Hudson River. And I joined the Estuary Program about a year ago to be able to assist with various initiatives on the subject of source water protection, with an emphasis on incorporating environmental justice considerations into community planning efforts. And a part of my job that I really enjoy is just helping individuals who are interested in proactively protecting their watersheds, people who are citizens of watersheds and ambassadors for the different water resources that we have in this valley, in finding resources and information that we might have at the Hudson River Estuary Program. We've been around for a long time, since 1984, so we have a lot of info that we've kind of stored at our program, as well as introducing folks to program partners and making connections that might not that they might not have otherwise been able to get connected to. So so NEIWPCC is it stands for, or it used to stand for the New England Interstate Watershed Pollution Control Commission. And that is a lot of estuary program staff are contracted through these third parties. So there's like a bunch of people that work for Cornell, and then there's also a handful of us that work for NEIWPCC. So it's a way, we're not actually state employees, but we work at the state. There's a lot of NEIWPCC staff. You should check out their website. There's a bunch of resources there, but we can talk. Oh yeah, New England. Thanks for the correction there in the chat. But yes, today I'm going to talk about the estuary program's new grant opportunity, which has a new funding opportunity for source water protection. So next slide, please. It's a very exciting time of year. The estuary program just released yesterday our 2023 grant opportunity. There is $2.15 million of grant funding available to help communities in the Hudson River Estuary Watershed increase resiliency to flooding, protect water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, and improve recreational access and education. So there are these 4 requests for applications that are listed. And I'm going to talk more specifically about the local stewardship planning request for application, because that's the one that I'm most directly involved with. But yeah, the deadline for these grants is July 12th. And please check it out. Each of these categories are described in more depth there. But to go into the local stewardship planning grant, there is $900,000 available within that category. And this is a RFA designed to help local organizations and communities advance climate change and waterfront resilience, as well as doing planning and feasibility studies and designs for water infrastructure resilience. This is also the grant category that includes our natural resources inventories and open space plans and indexes, as well as doing the local conservation overlay zones that you can adopt within your municipality that help protect natural resources. And it is also the last subcategory of that is water quality monitoring, watershed characterizations, water quality improvement projects, and now there is a new source water protection eligible project type. So can we please go to the next slide? So yeah, it's very exciting. Part of what we get to, or what I get to do, is coordinate with DWSP2. So we at the estuary program, because we are a state agency, we want to help promote these new statewide efforts to help proactively protect drinking water. So anything that the estuary program can do to help, become a pipeline and an implementation tool for getting the projects that are identified in DWSP2 plans, as well as other source water protection plans, we can now start to implement those projects directly. So this new source water protection eligible project type has a minimum project amount of $10,500, so some of those lower costing projects, and a maximum award amount of $75,000, which is an increase from last year, and that's exciting. And there's a relatively low local match of only 15%. And specifically what we were thinking for the source water protection and implementation is to be able to help folks implement a restoration or protection strategy or management method that has been identified in a source water protection plan. There will be maximum points awarded if it's from a DWSP2 plan. So that's one way of, getting all of those implementation strategies that were identified in that last chapter of your plan, get them done, get them figured out and moving forward. So if you have projects like the berm that, there's a relatively low amount to actually get that done, or you need to do a more in-depth feasibility study or design, an engineering plan or something, that's what we can fund. So just generally, the intent of this project type is to support actions that will increase protections to public drinking water sources. So again, that's public drinking water supplies, which Lindsay talked about a little bit earlier. And applicants are able to apply to implement anything that has been identified. So there are other source water. If you have ideas for source water protection that you've written down in various plans, I mean, we've been doing planning for such a long time, those are all eligible. So approaches may include, but are not limited to, implementing stormwater best management practices, developing land use strategies and policies at local and intermunicipal scales. We really like to encourage people to think intermunicipally and think of themselves as watershed citizens rather than just an individual citizen of a municipality. Developing an enhanced water quality monitoring program. So we have a lot of experience in that. Restoring streamside buffers, wetlands and floodplains, and protecting land through acquisition or easement, or addressing specific resilience needs to public drinking water systems due to climate change. So those are some examples that are included in the RFA, and you can go to the next slide, please. It's really exciting for us. As you've already seen this map, there are 64 communities that are enrolled, but 17 of them are in the Hudson Valley. And this is the list of the 17 communities that are currently enrolled. And there are 5 plans that are already completed. Those are the ones that are in bold. So we just want to help people understand that this is definitely a valuable free technical assistance opportunity to be able to get a plan underway, and you can join your neighbors in protecting your source water. Next slide, please. So lastly here, we just put a few slides or a few links together because beyond just the new source water protection eligible project type from the estuary program, which the grant was on an earlier slide, the DEC is really trying to help municipalities and individuals and local organizations be able to understand the broad range of funding that is now available through the state. And that one of those new tools is the funding finder, the DEC's funding finder. That's something that I'm helping with to make sure that all the estuary program grants get put on there, but there's roughly 50 different grant opportunities that are within this new funding finder tool. And I encourage you to check that out and reach out to me if you want a demo of using the tool or learning more about different state opportunities. It also includes the DEC's Water Quality Improvement Program, which is going to be featured in next month's Hudson River Watershed Alliance breakfast webinar that Emily mentioned at the beginning. And I also just encourage you to sign up for the following 3 newsletters, because that's the easiest way of getting informed of grant opportunities as well as different technical assistance, trainings, and various things that are going on within the programs. The Making Waves newsletter is specifically for DEC's like Division of Water, all the water stuff. DWSP2 will give you good case studies and different opportunities there. And then Hudson River Net will give you the Hudson River Estuary Program's announcements. And just yesterday, the River Net was about our new RFAs. So that is all I have, I think. Lastly, on this slide, I put up a source water video that was released about a year ago. I got to go to New Paltz's wastewater treatment plant and their drinking water treatment facility. So that's featured in the video. And again, we're just trying to help encourage people to become informed about where their drinking water comes from so that they are motivated to protect it. So that's one place that you can learn a little bit about Hudson Valley's drinking water. And I encourage you to reach out to me if you have any additional questions about anything that we talked about today. And yeah, I think that now we can open up to questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna and the whole team, for presenting on the DWSP2 program, some of the different aspects of the program, and great to hear some case studies from Red Hook and New Paltz. So I have a question. Just a reminder to everyone to please get your questions in on the Q&A box. We have plenty of time for questions now. And I had a question that came in around next steps for New Paltz in particular. So Tim, I know we saw that the DWSP2 plan for the village of New Paltz is wrapping up this year, but in terms of next steps and implementation, Are you looking forward to certain types of funding applications coming out of this process? Is there planning or engineering work that needs to be done to support some of the implementation? How are you seeing the DWSP2 program as leading to some of these next steps?
So we have our hands full right now, trying to connect the groundwater wells up at the plant to our filtration system. I think what's fascinating about that project is that, we have a $5.5 million filtration plant. So we're pulling super high quality groundwater and we're gonna send it through this amazing filtration system where you probably don't need to filter this water at all, but because it is municipal water and it requires some sort of treatment and the proximity to the plant, that's the way it will be engineered. So this has been a multi-year project that we've been working on, including acquiring the property from the Mohonk Preserve. So we want to get those 4 wells connected to our plant. And our next steps is basically just getting the DEC to approve or to update our water withdrawal permit and to get all the engineering done to have these wells connected. So that's basically where we're going to be spending a lot of our efforts.
Great, thank you. Question about drinking water for sources that are also navigable waterways. So the question is, how does the DEC monitor commercial shipping in drinking water supply sources that are also navigable waterways?
I'm guessing that question will go to me. I honestly don't know the full extent to the ability of the DEC to monitor that. In terms of how we would address that in a DWSP2 plan, is that we look at all the potential contaminant sources. So I might actually toss this over to Grant because I know that he's also working with the Hudson 7, where this is actually an issue for their drinking water source. But we have seen issues with railroad, and we also use roadways and address that with things like what was mentioned in New Paltz's plan, which is monitoring groundwater for road salt. So there are different strategies for addressing the potential contaminant based on the sources surrounding your drinking water. So Grant, I don't know if you want to add anything based off the Hudson 7.
Sure. So I'm assuming this question is in reference to the Hudson River and the shipping vessels and shipping activity that happens on the Hudson River. And that is primarily being monitored and regulated by the United States Coast Guard, since it is a federal waterway. Right. And in this case, the Hudson 7 are working with the Coast Guard representatives on discussing shipping within the Hudson River and the Mid-Hudson River stretch.
Great, thank you. Yeah, really interesting to think about these multi-purpose waterways that are shipping channels and drinking water supply and recreation, and the list goes on for the Hudson River in particular. Got a question here. Is there about the process of DWSP2 application? So is there a deadline to submit a DWSP2 application for technical assistance? Do you have any specific guidance for rural communities? And what is the typical turnaround time for submitting an application and receiving a response?
Yeah, those are all great questions. So as of right now, we are on a rolling application period. So anyone can submit at any time. If you have any questions or issues filling it out, feel free to use that source water email address if there's information that you can't find. But we have intentionally tried to make it very accessible. There's no issue in terms of what size the community is or how many, as long as it's a public water supply. So it can still be a rural community. Did I address all the questions? Was there another part to it?
The turnaround time?
Oh, turnaround time. Yes. So typically, I would say about, honestly, 2 weeks to a month at the most, but we usually just review the application and then talk about it as a team for if there's any reason to not work with the community, but that is really unlikely the case as long as you have a public water supply and meet all of that information. Yeah.
So if someone was inspired today and they said,
Yeah.
"Oh, my community should apply for this," you know, what would the steps be to submit the application? I'm just thinking like, by the fall, could you have a technical assistance provider in place?
Yes, so the application is available on the webpage. I believe the link was also shared in the chat. You can drop the application in an email and send it over. We will review it and we can get back to you before the end of this month if you sent it in today. So yeah, it's very easy. But like I said, if you have questions on where to find any of the information in the application, it does ask you about your public water supply. Usually you can go to your water treatment operator if you don't individually know the information. And we do ask that you provide a municipal contact on the application as well, because it is a municipal driven plan.
Yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions too, is, do you need executive authorization to submit on behalf of your municipality? Do you need sort of letters of support for this application?
You don't need letters of support, but we do ask that you include like your town supervisor or mayor on the application. Yes, and their approval.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Question about different types of source water bodies. Is the DWSP2 program appropriate for communities that are already facing known water contamination of their drinking water source, or is it really more for protection?
I can take this too, and then Grant, feel free to add on. So typically our program is really meant for prevention. If you do have known contaminant sources, we can work to develop strategies for future prevention. We do not address remediation directly though. And we really, that's beyond the scope of what our program is trying to do. So I know, Grant, do you want to add anything?
No, all good. Thank you.
Great. In situations where the water source, whether it's a reservoir or a well field, is outside of the municipality that's applying for the technical assistance, or that it's their public drinking water supply, does the DWSP2 program include intermunicipal coordination? How does that work?
Yep. So we actually have several plans that are working intermunicipally. So the Hudson 7 is one example of that. Also, New Paltz was the village and town working together as well, because their water sources fall outside of the village boundaries. But typically, we do have recommendations on doing intermunicipal agreements, but that is not necessarily required. It really just involves communicating with the other municipality and getting them involved on the stakeholder group. So part of that initial mapping that Grant covered is to look at neighboring municipalities that you may want to include in the plan itself, because it's important to get everybody at the table in agreement to protect your source of drinking water. Because as we all know, water doesn't follow municipal boundaries.
Great, thank you. Sort of following up on that, Tim, I'm wondering if you could speak to the process in New Paltz of the stakeholder engagement process, and who was on your team as you were developing the plan. If as you're shifting to implementation, you're thinking about, I wrote down the plan management team, if you're thinking about adding some new people to that, or how that transition is happening.
The folks that we included on our team were an activist involved in the Hudson River Alliance. We had a local restaurant owner. We had an individual from our public works department. Russell Urban Mead was involved. I've enjoyed working with Russell for years. He was the hydrogeologist that helped us identify where to drill for our test well. So he was super familiar with our system already. We tried to, we also had an engineer who's very familiar with public sewer and water facilities. He actually was from Indiana and moved to this area more recently. He serves as the chair of our environmental policy board. So we had a lot of strong folks. We also had a young man who works in the chemistry department at SUNY New Paltz. Like, you know, we had an all-star team of people who, you know, could add value.
That's great. And if other municipalities are interested in, assembling an all-star team, which sounds like a huge advantage to have, do you have any recommendations on how you did the outreach or how you located these people that might be participating in that capacity?
One thing that we've been doing it on a somewhat regular basis is we'll host tours of our sewer plant and our water treatment plant. And, you know, we use social media and letters to our local newspaper. I think just trying to be communicative and, you know, even talking about like, well, how much do we pay for raw water that we buy from the New York City DEP? And, you know, over the last 20 years, you know, the annualized cost of that raw water has increased by, I think, at this point about 7 or 8% per year on an annualized basis. So we pay a lot of money for our water. So when we're trying to figure out alternatives to, you know, it's super important to always maintain a connection to the Catskill Aqueduct, but we need to source more local water. And if we're doing that, we want to make sure that our local water is protected and of a certain quality. So I think just, you know, regularly talking about this topic and sharing updates with the public. You know, there's a public hearing coming up where New York City is going to propose raising the cost of raw water by 6.7%, and that public hearing is at the end of May, and that would go into effect early June. So I just think like regular communication that gets people interested and curious about where their water is from and how all of this works. You know, you never know what might pique someone's interest. So we just keep throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah, and I want to commend you, Tim, for your excellent Facebook posts and social media engagement around municipal infrastructure and pipes, and using all different types of communication to get the word out about a lot of these hidden costs, a lot of these things that are often underground, literally, but also figuratively. That really getting the word out in creative ways to make sure people understand the importance of these kinds of investments and these kinds of plans. So I've got a question around, yeah, Dan's used your hashtag in the comments here. Wondering about in the process and thinking about the stakeholders that you mentioned that included local businesses, nonprofit groups, folks from the local university. Is there opportunities to engage local nonprofits in this process as well? Thinking about land trusts, if there's parks groups, watershed groups, are there any restrictions to working with nonprofits? Can they be used as match? Is match required in this process? If not sure who the best person to speak to.
Yeah, I can start this off and then we can go around if anyone else wants to add to that. So yes, the answer to all of that is yes, except for no matches requirement. No, there's no exchange of funds at all in this program. It is free technical assistance. You're applying for free technical assistance. It's really meant to be an easy application process. And we just work with you to designate a schedule and time and plan to move forward with it. In terms of what you're asking about the stakeholders, we really want this to be a diverse and inclusive group of folks at the local level. It is somewhat up to the municipalities' leaders in terms of who is involved in getting that outreach. We as a program will help with doing the outreach, but it's up to you in terms of your boundaries and who you would be willing to connect with to get stakeholders involved. So that's like kind of the boundaries of where the program versus the municipality follows. And it sounds like New Paltz has done a really great job of getting all of those local folks involved in their plan. And that's what we'd really like to see. And we do encourage nonprofits and local watershed groups to have a say in the plan as well, which I know Red Hook has done as well in their plan. Did I answer everything?
Yeah, and I'm wondering, just to transition, if Grant, you could speak to that a little bit in Red Hook, who was on the stakeholder advisory committee and how that worked.
Sure. So in the case of Red Hook, because this was a intermunicipal and intercommunity plan, we had representatives from all three of the municipalities or communities rather. So Supervisor Robert McKeon, who couldn't join us this morning, the deputy mayor of the village of Red Hook, and now the mayor of the village of Red Hook, the sustainability chief of sustainability for Bard College was there. And then we also worked with representatives from the town's planning and zoning committee, because everybody's sources in Red Hook are effectively in the town of Red Hook. So they were the most important stakeholders to bring on with regards to future planning concerns. We also had representatives from the Saltgill Watershed community, who I believe are in the audience today, since they do a lot of advocacy and research and monitoring work of the Saltgill Creek's watershed or water quality in a region already. So getting that group together, and then we also had folks pop in from various town of Red Hook communities.
Great, thank you. Question here about if communities are considering a new public water source or taking over a private water source and converting it into a public water source, is there any assistance available to analyze the risks?
Not through our program specifically, based on the size of their municipality. The New York Rural Water Association might be a resource for them if they're a small enough municipality. Additionally, there is a groundwater within the DC Division of Water that may be able to provide resources on that, and I can look into that a bit more. That is not my expertise, but if anyone wants to follow up with me directly, I'm happy to look into that for them.
Great, thank you. And Tim, I see that you're sharing some resources in the chat, and just give me 1 second to make you co-host so that you can send it out to everyone, because due to a Zoom quirk, only the panelists got to see your JPEG, and I want to make sure that others can see that. I'm sure they're available. Okay, great. So we've got 2 questions actually here about flooding. So how does the DWSP2 process identify either impacts of flooding and drought on drinking water sources, or actions that may also provide flood mitigation benefits in addition to the water quality benefits for source water?
So I can speak to that some, and then Grant, it'd be great to have you add in as well. In terms of flooding and drought, so the mapping phase of the program does look at topography and also land use areas. And in addition to that, the plan preparation phase, where we look at water quality and also quantity and the population served. So it's taking in all of that information. We don't necessarily include looking into the future in terms of climate change projections, but that can be a part of the plan if the municipality would like to look into that further, and we can do some planning around that. But we partner with some of the climate office at the DEC, but we don't have all of those resources directly in the plan. It's really up to what the municipality is looking to do. So I don't know, Grant, if you want to speak to that and some of the plans you have done, if that has been incorporated.
Sure. So the Red Hook region had concerns about flooding, particularly, so with flooding, particularly since some of their sources are down gradient of a patch of, a fair amount of developed land. So concerns about stormwater runoff. So that is something that we did try to address in the DWSP2 plan for Red Hook, is trying to identify potential projects and down the line funding sources as necessary to help address those concerns.
you. Yeah, I'm thinking about how flooding upstream can move contaminants downstream, right? There's so many different impacts. Drinking water treatment plants, line breaks from intense storms. So I'm glad that it's being considered, and it sounds like there's room there for municipalities to make it their own, like you've been saying, and some of these other aspects. So we have hit the 9:30 mark, and I just want to thank everyone for this wonderful conversation around drinking water and the Drinking Water Source Protection Program. Thank you so much to all of our presenters. Thanks for everyone for being here. We hope to see many of you next week at the Falcon, Wednesday, May 17th, the Wavemaker Awards benefit. You can get more information on that on our website. We'll be back next month, June 8th, to talk more about source water protection through the Water Quality Improvement Program and the Land Acquisition Program for source water. And we'll be sending around all of the links that were shared. We'll be sending out a recording of this session, so you can feel free to share that information with others and your municipalities. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks. See ya.